Welcome to the CMO Spotlight. And today I'm so excited to have this conversation with Sheraun Britton-Parris, who is the Chief Marketing Officer for Cordance. Welcome, Sheraun.
Thank you. Hi, Joe. How are you? Thank you for
Doing
having me.
well. How are you? Oh, so thrilled to have you here. So I wonder if we could kick things off with maybe you're telling us a little bit about the company, Cordance, because some of us may not be that familiar with the company.
Sure, absolutely. So Cordance is a company that builds and buys SaaS companies, so B2B SaaS companies. We invest in the people, process, and products for the long term. So we thesis is growth, and it's all about organic growth in those businesses that we have, as well as M&A.
Excellent, excellent. And I know, Sharon, I know that you grew up in New York and you went to undergraduate at Hampton University and then
Correct.
got your MBA at University of Rochester, the Simon School of Business. And so I'm wondering if you could just tell us a little bit about your career path, as well as maybe some of your career aspirations that have yet to be fulfilled.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for asking that. So early in my career was in financial services, working on Wall Street. Um, in thinking about sort of what my career looked like, I knew that whatever I worked on, whatever I did, whatever company that was with, I needed to learn how to market a product. And I thought about, for instance, a regular hamburger, any brand that's out there. They sell a hell of a lot of them, not because they taste good, not because they're healthy, but really because of the marketing and the marketing machines
Mm.
behind them. So that's what kind of encouraged me, or at least was sort of the catalyst for me going to business school, was really to focus on marketing. And at the time, I was really focused on the beauty industry. I wanted to market something I was actually into. So what better than makeup? Started my marketing career in the beauty industry, working in hair color and launching hair colors from brands that were very popular in the US to here in the US. And I guess over the last 20 plus years, I won't say exactly the number, but 20 plus years, have really focused on building my marketing career, both B2C and B2B, and really focused on that driving customer value, driving revenue growth, and really enhancing marketing position. And that's what has led me up until this point, 20 plus years, to being CMO at Cordance.
So I'm curious about your role as CMO today. Like, tell us a little bit about your team and
Sure.
what your focus is. And then also, you didn't get to the aspirations part to it.
Yes, absolutely. So I'll share, I guess, my role first. So Chief Marketing Officer at Cordance, essentially, again, Cordance is a company that buys and builds companies. So my role from a CMO standpoint looks probably a little bit different than most CMO roles. It is all about driving or helping the business units in the portfolios in our company to essentially drive top of funnel demand. So my team, I have a team of demand gen directors who are working with the different divisions in the business to essentially drive top of funnel growth, and really drive at the end of the day growth for the business.
Is almost like a shared service kind of center
That's
of
correct.
excellence
That's
across the
correct.
portfolio.
That's correct. And so that's the core part of my role. And then in addition to that, I'm working with the presidents of the business on marketing and their teams on marketing best practices. And then because, again, we acquire companies, I'm also part of the due diligence with respect to just supporting the M&A for future acquisitions, the M&A team for future acquisitions with respect to any targets that we're looking for the company.
Great. And then in terms of helping companies with guidance once they've become part of the portfolio, do you get to help serve on the board or work with them in other capacities or no?
Yeah, so there are no boards within Cordance, and I do work with the teams with essentially to continue helping them on an everyday basis, guide them with respect to just again marketing best practices, what they should be looking for, ways that we can grow top of funnel, things like that. And then back to your question with regard to aspirations, um, in addition to continuing to grow and build within Cordance, I'm also or have taken board readiness courses and classes. So looking for future purposes for board opportunities where it's appropriate.
Awesome. So I'm curious if there's a piece of advice that either you got early in your career or maybe you would give to a young marketer that's just starting out, early in their career?
Yeah. So I'm asked that question quite a bit, and always asked about, particularly from a consulting standpoint, what would I do and what's one piece of advice? And I always say, one thing that stood out to me early in my career, I remember, and again, a lot of my examples are early in my career because I think back to kind of what was the basis and the foundation for growth for me. And I remember working in hair color specifically, and being knee deep in product development, P&Ls for 30 different shades of hair color, um, P&Ls, all that. Well, with that, essentially, a executive came to me and said, "You should really, in addition to what you're doing, go stand in the environments in which your customers are actually buying." And again, this is very B2C, but definitely applies to B2B as well with respect to understanding who your customer actually is. And so I actually stood in Walmarts and drugstores around where I lived, and essentially just asked questions of people who were buying the product. And it was at that point where I realized that people are not buying products, but they're buying solutions to their problems, and they're buying it for a need to satisfy something that they have a need for. So it is not just the product; it is really the need that you're fulfilling. So talk to the need, don't sell the product. So that would be my lesson.
So how do you do that without being super creepy in the drugstore, asking them questions about their psychological state as they're thinking about this
Right,
product?
right, exactly. No, I tried not to be creepy, but I just, asked a question. And again, at the end of the day, in that instance, we were selling self-esteem and confidence and
Mm,
youth and beauties, right? So that,
right,
again, we're
yeah.
not selling hair color, but that's what we're selling. We're selling self-esteem, confidence. And again, that's a very B2C example, but I think the same thing applies in the B2B world, because in most instances, it's what we do is in many instances B2B to C. So you always need to also understand who that end user actually is.
Hmm.
And so I would say that it is still, even for the B2B world, really important to talk to your customer and really understand why they're buying your product. I've done that for many of the businesses we have 15 businesses now. And many of those businesses, we've had very, focused questions with customers, asking them specifically why they actually buy. And so I think that's really important, so that when you start to craft campaigns, content, and so forth, you know what you're solving for and how you can actually solve their problem. And then that content becomes much more likely to convert, because you're resonating with what they are feeling and what they're needing. And I think that, while we put B2B and B2C in two different buckets, people don't take off their B2C hat or their B2B hat and put on their
100%.
B2C hat. It is all the same, and
Yeah.
people have a feeling and a need that they need to fulfill, that there's something that they're looking to satisfy, whether that is trying to shine in front of their boss or trying to look good in front of their peers or whatever the case is, and be the hero. Again, in the B2B world, it is really important to help them meet their objectives, whether, again, driving revenue, mitigating risk in their business, having more profitable business, all of those different things. We need to talk about how we're doing that for them.
Yep. Well, at the end of the day, you're trying to convince a person to take an action, whether
That's
that's
correct.
buy a hair color at the drugstore, or whether that's, purchasing an engine for a jet or something.
Correct.
You're
Absolutely.
still trying to convince a person to take an action of some kind. I believe everybody has a superpower, and I'm curious what you believe your superpower is.
I've thought about that recently. I always say, in general conversation, this is not necessarily marketing related, but I
Yeah.
always say, like, I feel my superpower is my gut. So I do notice energy shifts at a very visceral level. And I always can feel when something's not right. And then sometimes that shows up in marketing, right? Where I feel like, whether the content or the copy or whatever it is, it's just not right, or it's missing something. I just can't put my finger on it. But even with regard to people, just kind of feeling that energy shift is, I would say, my superpower. And so I move accordingly. So
That's awesome. I mean, that's a useful skill to have, because to your point, it works in life, but also in marketing. it may cause you to shift direction when you think something's just not quite right. You have
Correct.
that spidey sense, I guess, as they sometimes say, that it's
Yes.
not right. I'm curious, are there certain values that you like to demonstrate as a leader, or maybe that you would demand for somebody that would be on your team?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say, first and foremost, as a leader, I always think that empathy is a really important quality to carry and maintain as you're leading people. You're in charge of their careers in many instances, and at least while they're with you. And, we're all trying to figure it out and trying to do our best. And I always say I want to make sure that I lead from a firm but empathetic perspective, because obviously business still needs to get done, but people have lives outside of work as well. And you want them to bring their whole selves with them. So I would say certainly empathy. I would also say authenticity. And I say that because, you know, it takes trust to build relationships, and I don't think you have trust without authenticity. So in order to create that psychological safety for people to speak to you, to talk to you, to convey whatever they're feeling, I think that you need a level of authenticity and trust that goes along with that. Certainly growth mindset in this world, outside of marketing, but particularly in the world of marketing where things are changing every single day, staying abreast of all the different things that are happening and different tools, and just always having that beginner's mindset to learn something new and not being afraid to be the person that's trying to figure it out and trying to learn what it is. So that's something else I would say. And then I would say lastly, as a marketer, just being customer centric. So
Mm.
yeah.
Yeah, and that empathy comes in handy when you're trying to be customer centric, putting yourself in the mind of the consumer or
Yes,
the customer, and understanding what they're thinking, hearing, feeling, saying,
absolutely.
doing, all of those things.
Absolutely.
Okay, so here at Setup, we're marketing matchmakers, and what that
Mhm.
usually means is that we're working with clients that have agency support needs and connecting them with the right agencies. And so we're not a client, we're not on
Yeah,
the client side, we're not a brand, and we're also not on the agency side. So we live in
correct.
that space in between to kind of just understand both groups as well as we can. And so I'm curious, either at your current gig or even in a past life, how you generally like to work with marketing agencies.
Yeah, so I am a believer that strategy stays in the company as much as possible. But some of the tactical things and even this is the case now, again, with 15 businesses, we bring in agencies as we need them. Excuse me. And we outsource some of the tactical stuff. So like SEO, some of the content planning, if we need to do that, they'll work with some folks in the business. So things like that, even some of the product marketing, we have outsourced as well.
And are there, so it sounds like there are certain disciplines of marketing though that you feel should remain in-house at all times. And then there's certain other disciplines, and I shouldn't say at all times, but most of the
Mhm.
time. And then there may be other disciplines that you feel you benefit even more greatly from external expertise.
Mhm. Yeah. So again, again, just that strategic understanding of the business, how to bake out the plan to move forward. And again, we have 15 different businesses. Every business is different, so the playbook is not going to be the same. What they need and the gaps and things like that are all different. And so I don't believe in a one size fits all type of a playbook. Obviously, you take different things and you know what to pull and what levers to pull.
Right.
But those types of things stay in the business. And again, I know when to outsource tactical different things to get certain things done. And again, those are examples like the SEO, product marketing, things of that nature that are just really like you need content. So let's come up with a couple of content ideas and let's build out an infographic or a video or a thought leadership piece. Here's the guidelines, here's what it is. Obviously, we bring it in-house and take that and kind of make sure that the subject matter expertise is there. But we pull in different levers as needed.
Yeah, you might hire somebody to shoot the video, and you might hire somebody
Yes,
to edit the video, and you might have, the content may be your experts, but
yes,
then
correct.
perhaps you need somebody that lives and breathes video editing all day, every
All
day,
day
and you don't
long,
necessarily need
correct.
a full-time person just doing video editing for you all
That's
day,
correct.
every day.
And again, I go back to the example of SEO where the understanding of all the search engines and the different algorithms and the different
Yeah.
rules and how the fact that they're changing every day, that's one thing that I really feel like we can bring someone else to do that, but they would be so focused in the nuts and bolts of the business that they wouldn't have time to get a sense of what the world looks like outside and what's working for so many other different types of companies, and then bringing that to us to kind of, from a subject matter expertise standpoint. So
So as marketers, we often are working with the non-marketing functions within the company. We work with the CFO and the CEO and other parts of the C-suite who don't live and breathe marketing all day, every day. Although sometimes, often they think that they're an expert at marketing, even if that's not their day job. So,
mhm.
how do you demonstrate the value of marketing to the non-marketing functions within the organization?
Great question. Luckily, I have a leadership team that I think values marketing. So I'm lucky in that regard. I would say, generally speaking, right now, the company that I'm with now, we're a very data centric company. And so data is how we do that. So we are rolling that out as we speak. And that's specifically, I just got off a call with our RevOps team talking about just, again, the funnel and showing the flows and showing the data so that when we do present to the board, they are very clear about, what the metrics are. We've given them kind of the blueprint for what that will look like. And it's just a matter of the data coming on board and getting to flow so that we start to see that. And obviously that gets better every quarter, every month and every quarter, and being strict about making sure the integrity of that data is well.
So I have a curveball for you, which is the difference between, a vanity metric and metrics that are tied directly to revenue. What's the balance between, I don't know, I think vanity metric is by nature probably a negative term,
Yes.
but how do you measure brand sentiment, for example, or something that's a little squishier than directly
Yeah.
tied to revenue?
So we don't measure brand sentiment. We have small niche companies. So it's not something that I am measuring, but what I am measuring is, again, so if you look at the funnel, what does that look like? That is people coming to, obviously we're creating content and we're putting out great content right now, but that looks like people coming to the website because they're genuinely interested in what we're selling.
Mhm.
That looks like people, downloading or filling out a form or downloading a piece of content. And that becomes, so we are tracking MQLs, SQLs, and kind of down the funnel. And really at the end of the day, that's the metrics that we're most interested in. Yes, we are looking at other things like email opens and webinar visits
Yeah,
and
right,
attendance
right,
and
right.
all those different things and social media and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, if that's not converting to actual interest in the business and actual then at the end of the day close one business, then it doesn't matter.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a lot of levers that you pull between sure, I'm interested in that company. They sound
Yes,
interesting to the I'm ready to purchase. And
that's correct.
all of those trigger points between the sure, I'm interested in that company, or I have a need for the thing that company offers, to the I'm ready to buy.
Yeah,
It's like, how can you help somebody during that purchase decision, from the vision to the planning to the consideration to the
right.
negotiation and purchase? There's so many steps that you have to think
Yeah,
as a marketer about all of the different phases of the buy cycle and the roles of the people that are, you know different
yeah.
within that buying team, particularly for B2B. It may not be a single person making the decision, it may be a
Yeah,
buying team.
it's not. Correct. Absolutely. So you're absolutely right. And I think, it is there are so many activities, but again, we're not measuring activities. We're letting the data speak for itself to say if those activities, yes, those activities need to happen. But at the end of the day, what is the impact of those activities? And are they hitting the milestones that we need them to hit? If they're
Mhm.
not, then we need to kind of go back to the drawing board and redo and rethink the things that we've put out. But at the end of the day, the activities need to happen. Those are all things that are really important to driving growth, but we're more synced up to the actual impact and making sure we're tracking that, and making sure that all of those activities that we're doing are worth our while, essentially.
Excellent. So I'm curious if there's a program or a campaign or something that you've run, either in the current role at Cordance or maybe even a past role that taught you a great deal, either because it was a flop and you learned a valuable lesson that you needed to learn, or maybe it was a huge success that you would like to try to emulate again in the future.
Yeah, so there's lots of campaigns that I have had in my career, and when someone asks me about a flop, I always point to one in particular, in that we were launching something. This is back again, kind of in my earlier career days, but the example essentially is we were launching two products. One was in season, one was out of season, and again, going back to listening to customers and being very customer centric, the one that was out of season, of course, flopped. We were listening to a large big box retailer saying, "Oh, you got to do it. You got to do it. This is the time," and we knew it wasn't.
Yeah,
And
right.
of course, it flopped. And then,
Talk
of
about your
course,
spidey sense. Your spidey sense was on edge, and you were
yeah,
saying you were thinking
exactly.
like, I know you're telling me that we should do this, but I know it's not going to
It's
work.
not going to work. And then at the same time, we were launching another product that was super. It was again in season, summer season, and it did gangbusters, doubled the business in a year. So again, going back to being very customer centric and understanding the drivers of what and how your customers purchase your product is really important, and not deviating from that because it's convenient or makes sense for, retailers or something like that. It just didn't make sense for the customer.
Yeah, that's
So
great. Well, at least I mean, we learn lessons from those kinds of experiences, and the reality is, next time the spidey sense goes off, you're going to raise a flag and say, "Hey, wait a
yes,
minute, I'm
yeah,
not sure that we're actually serving the client's best interest
absolutely.
here." Or
Absolutely.
that's great. All right, so I'm going to switch things up and just ask you a couple questions for fun, kind of
Yes.
rapid fire, just to wrap things up. So the first is, I'm curious if there's a movie or a book or a sports team or a band or something that really inspires you, and what is it about that thing that inspires you the most?
Movie. So I'm not a movie buff. I would say the thing that probably inspires me, I love to travel. So uh new cultures, new food, new
Mm.
places, all of that inspires me a lot. We just spent Christmas in Tanzania. So that was pretty awesome. Again, very different culture, very different food, all of the above. Um, and being on one of the most beautiful beaches in the world. So that was something that certainly inspired me. And then from a more professional standpoint, sitting in silence actually
Mm.
is inspiring to me, because I feel like you can hear your thoughts at that point. And that's where all the, we're bombarded with so many different messages or so many different things going on. And
Alerts,
sometimes it's
chimes.
really
Yeah.
exactly. And I think the stat is like 60, 70,000 messages a day. And I'm sure with social media, it's probably worse. But sometimes just sitting in silence, you kind of come back to, okay, what do you need to do? And it just kind of comes to me. So I often use that and just kind of get still and get silent without TV or other kind of distractions, to try to think through what's the next best step in whatever I'm doing. So most of the time, obviously, it's work related, and thinking about, we're putting together. There's a lot of moving parts with the things that we're working on, and so um, it's easy to get distracted or just overwhelmed by so many different things. And kind of again, sitting in silence is the thing that often helps me kind of focus and move forward with confidence. So
Okay, so two follow-up questions related to both of
yes.
these. First is, what's the next place that you really want to visit that you've never visited to get inspired?
Got it.
Tanzania was the last, and what's the next? And then my other question is there something special that you have to do to get yourself into that meditative state or that state of silence? Like some people, do yoga or do meditation, a formal meditation practice. So two-part question for you.
Yeah. So place there, if I haven't been there, then it's on my list.
Okay.
But Ghana is one of the places on my list this year. So that will be that's on the list and is being planned. But then as far as practice are concerned, so I do meditate quite a bit, and I do I don't know if you've heard of Wim Hof, but I do Wim Hof breathing exercises. So they're all about just different breathing exercises to kind of center yourself. And yeah, so that's kind of what I do.
Cool. Very nice. All right. So last question is there a brand that you've never worked on that you always have been inspired by? And what is it about that brand that you admire?
A brand that I admire. There's lots of brands. I would say right now, Uncle Nearest Whiskey. I'm not a whiskey drinker, but Uncle
Huh.
Nearest Whiskey is a brand that so Fawn Weaver is the CEO. She is a lightning bolt that is revolutionizing the whiskey industry. And she's telling the story of an enslaved man, Black man named Nathan Nearest Green. And he essentially taught Jack Daniels how to make whiskey.
I've heard of him. Yes, yes,
Yes.
yes,
And
yes.
so I want to say they started just a couple of years ago. I don't recall, maybe 5, 6, 7 years ago. But it's already a unicorn on the brink of unicorn status.
Wow. Which
So
for those uninitiated, that's $1 billion in revenue, right?
yes, exactly. So I just see some of the things again from a distance, but I see some of the things that they're doing,
Wow.
and it's gangbusters. So yeah, so
Wow.
that's a brand that and again, I don't drink whiskey,
Well,
but
now you have to start. Yeah, this is going to drive us all to drinking.
yeah.
That's part of
So
the deal. That's cool.
yeah. Yeah. And again,
Very
that's a very consumer example. But just something I think a lot of people can relate to.
Yeah, well, when you ask about a brand that inspires somebody, it's hard to come up with a lot of great B2B examples.
Correct.
Although I think
Yes.
those of us who spend a lot of time in B2B and really love B2B understand well that B2B does not equal boring.
Correct.
B2B
It
does not,
doesn't.
and to your point, you still have to make a consumer, you still have to make
Connection.
a person take action, and great creative and great insights and data will often cause the right person to take the right action, whether it's in
Correct.
B2B or B2C.
Yeah. Yeah. No, again, so I've been in B2B for the last, I'd say 17, 18 years, and I love it. There's no place that I'd rather go. And while consumer was great, I love the B2B space and making that connection and helping businesses connect with their customers that are also then connecting to their customers. So
Yeah.
it's a great place to be, and excited to continue the journey there.
Well, you can tell that I've got a little bit of B2B geek in me as well. I spent, a long time working on B2B, and I love it.
Yeah,
It's a unique set of challenges that are very,
it is.
in some ways different, in some ways the same.
Correct. Absolutely. Absolutely. So no, it's exciting. Lots of stuff that we're working on, and excited to continue down that path with my team.
Wonderful. Well, Sheraun Britton-Parris, the Chief Marketing Officer of Cordance, thank you so much. This was such a lovely conversation. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.